Well, I have to say, last Thursday night was one of the greatest sporting nights of my life, and I had the privilege of sharing it with Prince William, although we were only in the same stand.
And humility training for Meghan Markle. She probably got a D for diva. Hi, all. Welcome to Heirs and Spares, your go-to for insight and opinion on two of the most talked about royal couples from both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right here from California.
And I'm Rupert Bell. I've remembered my name this time, and I've got all the latest news here in the UK of what's been an interesting and exciting week for the Prince and Princess of Wales.
That's right, Rupert. Let's talk about right off the top because I saw some very enthusiastic photos of you. Let's talk right off the top about your evening with Prince William. A sentence I love saying out loud.
Well, yeah, I wish to say that we were in the same row of seats, but we were in the same grandstand at Villa Park last Thursday night, semi-final of the Europa League. I know we're probably, we're talking sport, but actually,
No,
in terms of
this is so relevant because these
yeah,
videos and images went viral. They were burning up the internet and I saw articles written about how this humanized Prince William for so many sports fans.
yes, exactly. And I mean, I sort of knew when I got to the ground on Thursday, you always sense that he just might be in town because there are one or two policemen just dotted in slightly more places. Because obviously, let's be quite clear. You're going to a stadium with 42,000 people. There are security implications. He can't just suddenly turn up. So we've got to understand. And where Aston is, it's off the M6. It's not. It always seems to have snarl up traffic, but I think he got there plenty early enough. So it was a big deal. Look, Villa fans, we were all entering into that match with fear and trepidation because we hadn't been playing particularly well. And so we get there, and it is an extraordinary night. The place was absolutely rocking. Now, I sort of got an inkling that he might be there, as I said, but I didn't see until the end when we saw the pictures of him absolutely losing the plot. I can offer you similar shots of me losing the plot on
I've
social
seen
media.
them.
It's not a sexy look, I can assure you. The Instagram post that I put out there, I could have used a shaver, a razor blade, but anyway, I didn't care because it was one of the great nights. But I think the story that came out of it, not only were Aston Villa into the final of the Europa League, which takes place in Istanbul Wednesday week, I shall be there, but more importantly, the sort of reaction to Prince of Wales is sort of really giving it large, particularly when the penalty that Buendia scored. I know every minute of this match, so I can see you glazing over here, Kinsey. I do apologise. But I think what it did say is that this is not a fake football fandom. This is genuine because you've seen him through the years go to Villa Park, and we've seen similar reactions. But the reaction on Thursday was off the charts. But actually, it was just what every other Villa fan was doing. He was no different from me and all the other people around me. We just went absolutely over the top.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Should he be as the future king of England, losing it like that? Well, actually, for a modern monarchy, look, you may not like Aston Villa, you may not like football, but it shows that it's just like has something that he's really passionate about,
Yeah.
and he cares. And I think from that point of view, it's obviously we hear occasionally in this country politicians suddenly claiming to be a supporter in such and such a club and then being made to look stupid because they clearly know absolutely nothing about that club. A former Prime Minister, David Cameron, professed to be a Villa fan, but I wouldn't say that he would know the team sheets. Now, as I speak to you today, I just wonder. Prince William was doing a very important trip today in aid of mental health for St James's Place charity, a charity set up after the death of a 21-year-old student, James Wentworth Stanley.
Hmm.
And so he's been there in Birmingham. But I just wonder whether he nipped over to Bodymore Heath, the Aston Villa training ground, which I'm told he is prone to do if he has an hour between visits just to step up and go and see the team, who didn't play particularly well yesterday as a follow-up. But I think and I don't know what you thought of it looking out from America. Was it over the top? Was it? But it was just him being a football fan. And, then there was a further chat, wasn't there, about, well, he got bags under his eyes because he obviously got back late. Well, I mean, it took me 2 hours to get home after the game, so I didn't, and I'm only normally about an hour away. He's got to get back to Windsor. And then we also heard that the Princess of Wales probably under had to give in to the request from the three children to stay up to watch the game on a school night. So, which if there would have been lots of families, the length and breadth of the country, will have the same conversations about can they watch their team play. So again, that sort of humanizes that they are a normal family. Whatever you say about, that's over the top, but he cares. But then we saw him today back in Birmingham doing what he does best. And there he was talking about when he was an air ambulance pilot, he suffered from mental issues. But compared to the California lot, when he talks about it, it does seem to come from a much better place when he's doing his mental health chat. And actually, the football is probably a release from him away from the stresses and strains of being the heir apparent. And then you saw, I'm sort of going on a little bit here, Kinsey, but him then give that speech at the celebration of David Attenborough. I'm sure you've watched so many of his programs. Worldwide, 100 years of age. My goodness me, the most sprightly 100-year-old you will have ever seen turns up at the Royal Albert Hall. And then Prince William gets a standing ovation. And I thought the best thing he did, I don't know, the PR for the King was in his speeches and William starting, I'm paraphrasing, the standing ovation shouldn't be for me. It should be straight away for David Attenborough, deflecting it away, which I thought was a perfect way to sort of say thank you, but I'm not the king star of the show here tonight. And so I think he had a good 48 hours. And he also hosted a garden party that afternoon as well on Friday, the morning after the night before, i.e. Villa's wonderful win in the Europa League semi-final. I'm sorry we've talked sport, Kinsey, because I'm sure that's not necessarily, but I think in terms of what we've seen of the Prince of Wales this week, a good week all round, looking human and actually delivering a lovely speech in honour of not only his friend, but someone, probably a mentor in many ways to him as well, the great Sir David Attenborough.
You mentioned Prince William's authenticity and sincerity when it comes to this team. I'm recalling a recent interview he did not too long ago where he sat down with some sports gurus and killed it, right? Weren't people so impressed with his organic knowledge and just the way that he flowed when talking about the game and the team itself?
Yeah, well, yeah, he did this interview with a Talk Sport colleague of mine, Ali McCoy. He's one of the great commentators.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
I need to be nicer to Ali, huh?
Yeah, well, you do. But Ali was doing work for TNT, who are the hosts, who have the rights for Champions League, and it was before the PSG game in our quarter final, and he gave an absolutely outstanding tactical assessment of the way he thought the team would play. And Rio Ferdinand, the one with Ali and Rio, said, "Carry on like this, I'll be out of a job." So his knowledge, and I think it's forget the Aston Villa connection. He is also president of the Football Association. So hasn't Prince William always said, I will do things that I feel I can give added value to and I'm really interested in? Now, it's not going to be always the case because sometimes he will, by nature of his situation, have to be involved in things that he might not have the absolute fever for. But I think that was a very good interview. And actually, I did wonder whether Ali had a word with him before the game, and I did speak to Ali after sort of the next day, and Ali told me that no, he never got a chance to catch up, but hopefully, you never know, before the final in Istanbul, should he go, which might be a bit more complicated to enable to happen because of the security and everything. So He
And
may,
he's been
unfortunately.
legitimately busy, like you said. He's had like
Well,
event after event after event. So that his schedule might already be prepared and they might
yeah.
not want to rearrange.
No, but a lot of Villa fans suddenly seem to be rearranging their schedule, with that in mind, because we've been
Yeah.
the favourites. So I just wonder he might have just been saying, well, we'll just arrange private meetings, nothing public, for a couple of days so he can nip over to Istanbul. I don't know. I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no idea. But I obviously, given everything that's going on, it's probably not completely straightforward that he should go to Istanbul. But it is. I think the football thing is significant for him. We've seen him being interviewed over the years. Why does he support Aston Villa? Well, it came about because he didn't at the time want to go fashionable. But this has been a genuine, and you can see now a genuine. But I think with the garden parties, he was looked with the Princess of Wales. And it was interesting. Again, they had Zara Tindall as the sort of the site, the number two. Basically it was Prince and Princess of Wales, and they went for the 40 somethings.
No,
To
Prince
come
Edward
along.
and Sophie were there.
Were they there? Yeah, but I think it was interesting that Zara was there for this one. The King and Queen were there, and then Princess Royal, and then the others. And I think the Duke and Duchess did both. Of Edinburgh did both because they're the sort of go-to workhorses. But it was interesting that Zara was there, and
But
that is.
Zara is wildly fun. She has
Mm,
so much in common with Prince William, especially when it comes to sport. And she is just a good time. I think she's so reliably uplifting and positive. We always use the word unedifying when we talk about you know who, and Zara is the antithesis of that. She is so edifying. She's sunshine.
Yeah, and it's interesting how she's navigating the commercial world. I mean, she is an ambassador. I don't know whether you're aware of the fashion brand in this country, Fairfax and Favour, but she's always been photographed on that as an ambassador for them. She is navigating the sort of commercial world, and no one is ever sort of questioning because they see it's coming from a good place. Now, she is, as you say, a highly talented equestrian rider. This last weekend, we had one of the big horse events, the Badminton Horse Trials. She sadly wasn't hasn't got horses that are good enough to compete there this year. Maybe she's still riding, but it is interesting that placing her there. I just wonder whether they see the Tindalls as a good asset to have around as and when required. Because William gets on well with him. Mike Tindall, doesn't he call William One Pint Willie or
One
whatever
pint
it is?
Willy. Yeah.
One Pint Willie. So, so I think they are good mates. So I just wonder that is something that you just look, I'm speculating, but it was interesting that Zara was out there.
Yeah.
And it was not that she wasn't competing, but all her equestrian buddies were competing at Badminton Horse Trials, which is not a million miles from where they live at Gatcombe anyway. So she might have gone over there at the weekend. I don't know. Probably not. But it was interesting, and I think that was a takeaway from that, just to see the elevation and maybe William looking for just having someone of his generation around and giving
Well,
them,
you
their
can't have the
perspective.
York girls around right now, even if
Well,
one is knocked up. It just isn't. It's not looking good.
it's not a very attractive phrase, knocked up.
Well, when your
But
mom's all over the newspapers for
oh,
hooking up with Diddy, I'm sorry, but I'm going to use
yeah.
knocked up. Oh, I wanted
Well,
to say
well,
about I had to do an interview for the equivalent of 60 Minutes Australia, and we were talking about how Fergie and Meghan are really kind of low rent when it comes to the brands that it's so interesting that you bring up Zara because Zara is the perfect example of how a royal should pursue endorsement deals. She pursues these elevated, sophisticated, delicate, high high value brands. She's not shilling a weight loss company, Weight Watchers. She is truly pursuing brands that uplift her. There's equal value in, you talk about that high fashion brand that she's associated with. She typically makes some really great decisions around who she associates herself with, and she is a great example, or a template of how you can still linger in the royal space and be a commercial asset or entity.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege of interviewing her many times in my equestrian hat. And, and I see her racing. She's a director of Cheltenham Racecourse, our premier national hunt racecourse. So she's involved in things that are close to her heart. We know she goes to Australia when she's doing in January. She goes over there, a brand ambassador. So she's very astute, and I think it's important. But I do think whether she will just be seen because her mother has always played that. She's Zara Tindall, Mrs. Zara Tindall. So she's not got the title that comes with it yet, and she's not technically a working royal. But I just wonder whether we could see an evolution of that because we've talked about it before. William's generation is now very thin on the ground of people who can step up to the plate, and Beatrice and Eugenie certainly can't. Now,
Mm.
I think Jack Brooksbank, he's a nice, I think a bit harsh knocked up because I think I've met the guy, he's all right, okay. We both have the same alma mater, but, I do,
I'm sure he's fine, but
yeah.
his wife voluntarily hung out with a convicted
Oh,
sex offender.
well,
So
this is the problem for them, and it will be putting a lot of pressure. They've talked about the pressure for the other sister, Beatrice, and their marriage maybe being, the speculation. I don't know, but it can't be easy. Unfortunately, their parents have dragged them in, and they, willing or unwillingly, have got themselves embroiled in this. So they are no longer they're persona non grata in terms of being able to be used on behalf of William and helping him out. So that's why you probably could see Zara, who has a sort of very public image, offering more support as and when required um, to, to William. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic from last week. My sort of takeaway from that garden party.
can I ask you one more question about Prince William before we move on? I'm sure you've been asked or you've seen these stories circulating. I was annoyed to see them circulating. An American author has written a new book about Catherine, and some of the headlines coming out of it are how the king is so fearful of William's anger and rage. And it's like, not this story again.
Yeah.
I hate that story. I think the Windsor men are kind of notorious for their tempers, and they live in a goldfish bowl. So I say they are justified and that frustration sometimes, I imagine. But I felt like the viral videos of William were such a positive reflection on his personality and his sweet, animated soul that thankfully it kind of crushed those clickbaity headlines that were kicking up around William's temper, which, you know what? I don't care. I do not care.
Well, I think, look, um, there will be frustrations going with the job. As long as whatever he's doing, he's managing to control it. And maybe that's part of his
Yeah, we've
growing up,
we've never seen a pin incident like we
yeah.
saw with his dad. We've never seen that.
Well, and that's why when you think of that state visit to America, it could have gone wrong for the king. You might have had the fountain pen moment, but it didn't. It was as smooth as you could possibly want. So
Mhm.
look, I'm sure there will be frustrations. Probably, the frustrations of all the Andrew stuff and the brother and his wife creating yet more problems for them. No wonder he probably gets a little bit frustrated. So it'd be interesting to see. I'm not going with that.
Yeah.
I think we all know that every so often people, blow a fuse, right?
Hmm.
And as long as it's done overstepping the mark, and he's just getting on. Just sometimes you need to scream and shout just to get rid of any frustrations. As long as it's not a regular occurrence, which I'm sure it's not, then all's well. Now I'm going to go back, and another thing I've got to bring. I'm going slightly again, not necessarily off piece, but didn't we see talk of another school that they could be going to, or the children could be going to?
I
Don't know
don't
whether
know.
that
I didn't
passed.
see that.
Ah,
You can fill me
I
in.
can because I know this school because one of my children went there. Oundle is now being talked of as a possible school for the three of them because obviously George is going somewhere, and they were seen going to Oundle in Northamptonshire. One of my children was fortunate enough to get a drama scholarship to go there, and it's a big school, but more importantly, it's co-ed. It's in a town, a small Northamptonshire town called Oundle. It's a school that's been established for centuries. So it's interesting that that school is on the radar as well. So no decision has been made, but I'm sure in due course we're going to hear. But the only negative might be from the Prince and Princess of Wales's point of view. It's not next door,
Yeah.
if you see what I mean. Whereas
Hmm.
Marlborough would be an easy scootle down the M4 from where they live. Uh, Northamptonshire, not so straightforward. It's not. It's probably from where they are, probably about an hour and a half, hour and three quarters on a good run on the M1. But it'd be interesting that that school was on the radar. So, doing what lots of parents often have to do, which is try and find the right school and walk around and try and work it out. Their criteria obviously will be very different in terms of security. What can be managed because it's not a closed campus. It is in a market town. So but bearing in mind that William went to Eton in the same circumstances, that obviously can be managed.
Just piggybacking off of something you said earlier, I do think it's important for the audience to, and for just to reiterate what you said, we always see the Prince of Wales so positive in talking about the future. And this picture that some have decided to try to paint of him being angry and negative, I've never seen it. I also never see him fixate on the past. He doesn't fixate on mistakes or disappointments. He's always looking forward to the next opportunity, and actions speak louder than words. So I think it's important that whatever these people are claiming is happening has allegedly happened behind the scenes. We've never seen it. But what we do see is a really positive entity, like a really positive person who speaks, you know, um, in a way that just makes you excited about the future. And almost even when he was talking about David Attenborough, in every way, he is just so uplifting. So I think that says more than a headline.
Yeah, at the moment, there's just a plethora of royal books. I can't keep pace, right? Whether it be about the King, Harry, Meghan, countless books coming out. And so they're all trying to come up with something that gives them a slightly different USP and something that will attract people to reading it. So it is quite, so obviously that feels like that's a bit of clickbait,
Yeah.
and whereas, as I said, I think, there will be times when he might be deeply frustrated. But the interesting, another good headline that he had, it came out because it's always about the finances of the royal family.
Yeah.
It was revealed that he's been paying £7 million in tax every year. Now,
Mm.
that's a punchy sum. So saying that he's not paying tax, he is, or the Duchy of Cornwall is.
Yeah.
So that is, so they're give and take, and and the Duchy of Cornwall funds his household. So the fact that in addition he's able to give 7 million is a positive sign that he is aware of the PR, that we've got to be an open book in the way we manage the royal family. And
Yeah.
hearing that and reading that was something I thought again was a good sign to read, that they're not, the finances aren't being, there's one rule for the royal family and no one else. He's a taxpayer just like you and I.
Can I ask you if you're excited about the Princess of Wales's visit to Italy? That's happening on May 13th and 14th, just a few days away. This is her first overseas work visit since her cancer diagnosis in 2024 and her revealing that she was in remission in 2025. This is all about her early childhood project, which she calls it her life's work. She's incredibly passionate about it, and the palace has described it as a fact finding mission where she will spend time digging into Italy's internationally recognized approach to early childhood education. Um, in Italy, it's the parents' job to decide and to strategize around education versus in the States, where a lot of parents are working two jobs, both working two jobs, and just kind of hoping that the school system will take care of their kids. But Italy is unique in the way that they are allowing the families real freedom to pursue their education. Catherine, I think, will really charm Italy and the world in the next few days.
I think it's good to see her back on the road. I think that's it. Now, it's not for me. I applaud the sentiment of what she's doing because I make no, parents should face up to the responsibility as best they can to bring up their children. But I fully appreciate what you're saying. Families do have to juggle. But at the heart of it is what she's saying is the sort of early years will sort of mold the child into the person in future, the important early years. You may think we can't remember what we were like. My earliest memory, probably I have to be 5. But her whole point of this project is those first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I have no recollection. I say my first memory was Winston Churchill's funeral, and in whatever year that was. So that's my first sort of genuine sort of memory of my childhood. I would think I was 5 then. So what I'm saying is, it is an important project. And I know she's been to places in the Midlands in this country, near Coventry, and places like that. She went earlier, last time she was abroad. So I think this is something that she feels that it's easy for her to get involved with because she's genuinely interested and she's creating the impetus for this to have a lasting and broader impact. However, will it be game changing? I don't know. But will it be something that lends itself to a conversation of how people bring up your families, you know, parental responsibility, but what do you do in those 5 years to make sure you're creating the child of the future, whichever way it is. Every family is different and has to manage and juggle those balls to come down in the right direction. But if this is a positive guide and influence, it may be a force for good with parents who are thinking, well, let's just give this a read and see what is being talked about here.
Love that. Let's pivot to some less uplifting,
Well,
exciting
do you want me
headlines.
to get my William Angry face on? Is
Get
that
ready, get ready.
get ready?
Meghan
Here we go. Rock
Meghan
and roll.
Markle, this is actually pretty. I actually laughed out loud when I saw this headline. Hey everyone, Kinsey Schofield here, and I want to tell you about today's sponsor. It's a total game changer, Peak's Liver Detox Protocol. You may not know it, but your liver handles a lot: energy, hormones, digestion, and even your mood. But with all the stress and toxins from everyday life, it needs some love. Forget harsh cleanses. Peak delivers gentle daily support inspired by traditional Chinese medicine. Their routine uses two simple blends. The first is a warming turmeric mix with cinnamon and black pepper, designed to help the body absorb it better and support the liver while calming inflammation. The second is a ginger and cinnamon blend that helps with blood flow, digestion, bloating, and immune support. The magic is how they work together to activate and flush for better digestion, stable energy, less brain fog, and that light, clear feeling. My energy is consistent, my skin is clear, and less bloating. That's peak where spirit meets science. Redefine your standard of health, secure 20% off your order, and begin your intentional wellness journey today at peaklife.com/Kinsey. That's PIQUE life.com/Kinsey. Thanks so much. Meghan Markle underwent humility training ahead of her Australia tour. An insider said Meghan was painfully aware going into Australia that accusations about her being demanding, controlling, or difficult had continued to follow her ever since she'd stepped away from royal duties. She understood this tour would be judged not just on appearances or headlines, but on whether people felt she came across as approachable, warm, and genuinely engaged. Because of that, there was an extraordinary level of planning behind the scenes aimed at softening her image and eliminating anything that could feed the old diva duchess narrative. Now, I don't remember the name of the podcast, but she did a podcast with two young men who have Down syndrome. And that to me was one of these PR moves to soften her image. I sent that around to some of the people I work with. Maureen Callahan replied, "Is this AI?" I mean, it was so out of character for Meghan, and it was so kind of thirsty for positive feedback that some people did not believe it to be true. What's your take on this? There are other quotes, but nothing really stands out to me when it comes to this source talking about this plot to soften
What
Meghan's image.
shows you what a problem she's got if you're
Yeah.
having to do this. End of. You know,
Mhm.
that everything is because the public's perception is someone who is, um, out for her number one. So she was then going to Australia to then, going to Bondi Beach, going to the hospital, all those with this quasi-royal visit. So there, but unfortunately, she may have had the humility training, but no one forgot to tell the people merching the clothes
Ugh.
that this is not probably the image you wanted because on the one hand you may have had your diva training or not diva training or lack of diva, take the diva out of her, but at the same time you can buy all your clothes while you're going to the hospital. So I'm sorry, it smacks of desperation that they know that she's a liability.
Mm.
And then we're getting now, it just is that trip was not a success. I
Well,
mean,
we're saying that, but then they have that People magazine article that they clearly, in my opinion, just my opinion, says the attorney makes me say, that they clearly, in my opinion, influenced through their sources, saying that Australia was a huge success and that was going to be the template for future trips, that they have every intention of taking, basically looking like the half in, half out royals that the Queen said you cannot be.
well, in my opinion, I think that's hogwash.
Yeah.
And having spoken to Australians, it did not resonate. But you see, if you're going there and you're having your ego massaged, of course you might think it's fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not getting much feedback and follow up from that amazing weekend, the retreat. That
Yeah.
seems to, if that had been a success, we would have had that, look at, this is something I'm now going to do around the world. If that, this model of come and meet me, if it had been a rip-roaring success, it sounded like she couldn't wait to get out of there because
Yeah.
to head off to that football match or the rugby
She
match
she
or
was
whatever it
seated
was.
very close to the emergency exit.
Yeah, and so I think that I would suggest, look, of course, this is what they want to do. Harry's desperate, you get the feeling, to be back doing what he can do because it's easy for him. It's what he was trained to do. He can go and do this. He's good
And
at
he's
meeting
not
people.
good at anything else
No,
other
no,
than
and
maybe
that's,
surfing and smoking a joint.
well,
In my
uh,
opinion, the attorney makes me say.
yeah, yeah, well, exactly. So I have no idea what he's getting up to. But everything does seem to me to be a sort of desperate need for for publicity. And now there's another story. So anything that comes out of People magazine, I have a heavy pinch of salt nearby.
Yeah.
And again, the diva story, it shows once again how hard they are trying to make themselves, or Meghan, to be relevant, because she is the thorn in Harry's side. Now, Harry's created all these problems, but ultimately he's being further dragged down by her.
And
Because she,
That's what Dr. Sophie Shandaka said, according to Tom Bauer's latest Harry and Meghan book. Here's the research that I paid for that says you are a less likable character because of the woman you married. And we are struggling to secure donors because we are associated with you and your wife specifically.
and that says it all. And I think that's part of the problem when I hear within Invictus, because I've heard stories that some of the games they've gone to, when she's there, he's sort of in thrall to his wife, and when he's not there, he goes back to being the ex-serviceman dealing with the soldiers and the injured and wherever, and he's back to his normal self.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting dynamic, and obviously there's now we're reading all sorts of stories about Invictus. I have no idea of the finances of Invictus, but again, the talk, will she come here? And obviously, you know, security is going to be ramped up if she does appear. And obviously, we saw what happened to Andrew the other day in Sandringham, in Norfolk. There are obviously security concerns. There will be security. We don't need to worry about that. But it's actually the optics of her being here. Is she a force for good for Invictus? Harry says yes, but then he couldn't say anything else. What
Yeah.
do Invictus think? I don't know for sure, but I do know there's been some changes of personnel. So, which again,
That again reflects what happened at Senabale, where Harry
yeah,
tried to purge the people that did not like him or
yeah,
didn't like Meghan. He just tried to purge them. Before we move on to the next story, which is going to probably annoy you even more than this one, here are some quotes that I will repeat from the source. The feeling within her camp, Meghan's, was that Australia represented a major reputational test, and Meghan was determined to prove she could command attention without triggering the kind of backlash that overshadowed parts of her royal life. I wanted to repeat that because I felt like your point regarding the app and, shilling clothing while clutching victims of a terror attack,
mhm,
it did overshadow any sort of good they tried to do. So I would say that quote is inaccurate. Another source added the trip was basically preceded by humility, or more precisely, anti-diva training for Meghan, which I just thought was a great quote. Anti-diva training for Meghan. So let's pivot to this next one. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have PTSD over King Charles's US trip. They are said to be struggling emotionally, Rupert, in the aftermath of King Charles's hit high-profile US visit, with sources telling OK Magazine the trip has proved deeply triggering for the couple as tensions with the royal family continue to simmer. According to an insider that spoke to the magazine, the optics of the visit have been particularly difficult for Harry and Meghan to process. They told the mag, there is a growing feeling that this situation has affected both Harry and Meghan far more deeply than they initially anticipated. Watching Charles appear so relaxed and publicly aligned with Trump, who has openly ridiculed their marriage, has struck a nerve, has brought up a lot of difficult emotions and feelings to them, like a very personal affront. It's been, as they would say, very triggering for them. Harry can intellectually accept that his father's role requires him to engage with whoever's in power, regardless of past comments or personal tensions. But emotionally, that understanding doesn't soften the impact. This sounds so true to me, that they would sit around and stew over King Charles seemingly getting along with Trump days after Trump poked fun at their marriage in the White House in the Oval Office. However, Harry started it in the Ukraine.
yeah. Well, he did, and the whole thing is just he needs to get over it because the king, as he alluded to then, what you read out was that they were he was just doing his job, and whoever the president at the time, bearing in mind we're celebrating 200, well, America is celebrating 250 years of independence. Oh, and by the way, I made an error on last week's program, which I
Oh,
just need to correct,
uh-oh.
about George Washington being born down the road. I have to say that lots of viewers pulled me up on my lack of historical reference, for
What is the
which,
correct answer? I've never thought about where George Washington was born in my
well, he
life.
was born in America. I think it was his father
Uh,
born down the road, but he was born in America, as was John Adams. So I
well,
offer
look at
my
you.
I offer a humble apologies. So just to find a way of getting in apologies
That's so
because
sweet of you.
anyway, but more importantly, the whole point, the king was doing his bidding. It was a rip-roaring success. He was funny. He looked to be enjoying himself. He had President Trump, who must be a nightmare to manage, eating out of his hands. So everything was fantastic. And that will just have annoyed because Harry and maybe Meghan, because they look so at ease there. They just got on with it. No fuss, no bother, well managed, well organized. Yet for Harry, it just reflects what he's missing. So that's part of the PTSD, I think,
Mm.
is that he's got to get over it and realize that he's not part of the royal family anymore. He's created this problem. When he goes to Australia, he's trying to recapture the royal flavour, the visits. It's not there. And
Mm.
yet he's seeing his father storm and have the crowning moment, I think, of his reign so far in
Yeah,
terms of
totally
what
agree.
he did. And that has just added, and it's in America where where
That's
Harry
Harry's house
and
now.
Meg,
It's Harry's home.
and he wants to be top dog, but he's not.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'm
that's the
sorry that I
problem.
was staring down. I wasn't trying to be rude, but I wanted to read these two quotes side by side. Um, it said, for Meghan especially, there's a real sense of frustration that the negative commentary about them from Trump has been allowed to stand without any form of response or defense. That silence, from her perspective, only deepens the discomfort and reinforces the feeling that they are being left exposed to ongoing criticism. She and Harry are essentially suffering a form of PTSD over Charles's US visit. Now, the reason why that stood out to me as potentially truthful was this quote that Prince Harry gave in January of 2023 that I constantly think about. There comes a point when silence is betrayal. We know that they do feel that way. To which I would say, why didn't you defend Catherine and the King when Omid Scobie accused them of racism in Endgame? Silence is betrayal. But that, we know that that's Harry and Meghan's motto, that there comes a point when silence is betrayal, and they resented the royal family for not defending them. Like, that's really one of their biggest complaints. Meghan's specifically, that she wanted the royal family and the PR machine inside the palace, instead of elevating all of these great causes and campaigns they had been pursuing for years. Meghan wanted to interrupt the program to, you know, fight every accusation about her in the headlines, and that silence was betrayal. So this article kind of reeks of truth to me, because we know that this is their mindset and they kind of fixate on the negative. And, you know, compared to Prince William, they are stuck in the past and they are bitter about things that happened forever ago. They have a hard time moving on.
Well, the important of the royal family's motto is silence is golden.
Yeah.
And you
Never
are right,
complain. Explain.
never, and that's it. Silence is golden because you can get time to turn around the negative PR. You look what's happened to Queen Camilla,
Mm.
right? There is a point. Never just got on with it, never complained. Was probably reading some pretty uncomfortable headlines, or even more, still uncomfortable headlines. People sort of not our queen and all that sort of stuff. So silence is golden if it's used in the right way. And the royal family's view is, we get on with it. The show goes on. This is an institution that's been around since 1066. We get on with it. We have to do what, and we're not here to try and ruffle feathers. Meghan wants to ruffle feathers. She wanted to come into the royal family and absolutely torch the place
Run the
and say
show
it's
with no,
my show.
yeah, run
You
the
know, she
show
liked
with
to.
zero to no
Hmm,
with zero to
well,
no evidence that she was capable of doing it. She had no history of doing anything other than reciting lines on the set of a TV show in a towel.
well, I mean, this is the point, and so she comes in, and there's actually I read an article the other day, sort of comparisons of how Catherine sort of just has taken the view of, look, we sort of learn, it couldn't be easy, but from, obviously the long courtship and then getting married, what it was on one bit, then it was off, and then it was back on again, and now they're sort of she's learned and grown into the job, but it's not without its complications along the way. Obviously, the cancer diagnosis being the most notable, but it is Meghan. If she'd learned, she just couldn't keep her trap shut.
Mm-hmm.
And therein lies the problem. And she still can't because she's still feeling the victim.
Yeah.
And yet here she is living in California, living a grand life. What is there to be a victim about? That's what I want. That's what I struggle to comprehend. You know,
The
she's
last
got.
the last 7 years of her life were the worst 7 years, and you're like, you had two seasons and a Christmas special on Netflix, and you are totally unqualified for that. You can't cook to save your life. Show me that ramen noodle dish. You had the Netflix reality show with your husband, where you got to try to totally rewrite history, no fact checking involved. You live in a mansion in Montecito that you wouldn't have been able to afford on your ending Suits paycheck, because Suits was writing her out of the show when she met Prince Harry. You married an effing prince, Rupert. You have two beautiful, healthy children, as far as we know. You hang out with Oprah Winfrey when she takes your calls. You lived in Tyler Perry's home for free and flew in his private jet for free. You had the biggest, most glamorous wedding paid for by taxpayers. Your second wedding, we should mention. Your first one involved marijuana on the tables in Jamaica to poor Trevor Ingleson. So I'd say the Windsor wedding was a step up, but it's just like, how can you complain about your life? You have an enchanted life.
And this is the point. This is what I think causes them problems because their sense of self-entitlement is what is causing them their downfall. And until they can offer, hence the diva training way, a sense of humility and a sense of perspective. Because we all know that William and Catherine live a gilded lifestyle in Forest Lodge. They've got all the privileges. He's aware of it, but he's trying to normalize by doing things that actually can, with his influence and his position, resonate with the wider public. You know, the mental awareness things. Okay, we know that's Harry's big thing, mental health. But
Yeah,
when you hear
but like
him,
we said, William projects someone that is mentally sound. Prince William projects somebody that has done the work, that is whole. And Prince Harry does not. Prince Harry comes off as a lunatic. In my opinion, the lawyers would like me to say, in my opinion, Prince Harry comes off as someone that is stuck in the past, that makes himself sick over not getting his way, and does not appear to be an authority on the subject.
man, he's got two giant chips on his shoulders.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem, right? And therein lies the difficulty for him because, he's got you this better life that he went for. If it's so good, why does he just feel that endlessly a simmering resentment? Why do they always have to match what the Prince and Princess of Wales are doing? With the sort of Instagram stuff. They're not members of the royal family. We don't see Zara putting stuff of her children regularly, or, we see them maybe running around an equestrian showground, but, occasionally see them, but there's no No, nothing going on. Why do we need to see birthday pictures of these two people who, you know, when they split, were told that, they wanted to lead as normal as life as possible. It's not
They
normal to.
lied to us about Archie's birth. They lied to us
Hmm,
about Archie's birth. Like been uh, they've been unwilling to or unopen. They've just been so bizarre when it comes to their children that like I don't care. Leave me out of it.
hmm.
I don't care about their birthday. I don't want to see pictures of them. Leave me out of it because they've lied so much in the past and that is not my opinion. You can go research when Archie was born versus when Harry and Meghan claimed he was born and told media and how frustrated Prince William was with that whole circus.
No.
That it's hard for us to accept anything they say, especially involving their children, as truth.
Yeah, and the sort of undercurrent, you feel that, they're the next thing to be monetized,
Yes.
and yet they want privacy, and they want privacy all the time. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, that couldn't be further from the truth, and that
Meghan
is
Meghan
what.
told Oprah that was her right. That was her right. The privacy.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Have all the
Take
privacy,
it.
privacy,
Take it.
all you want. Take it. Be private. Enjoy your lifestyle. If you are running a business, then run it properly, right? Do the right thing. Don't all she looks like. It's like when you said people got a CV, just a mass of different jobs, and you go, what's going on
You're
here?
all
Why
over
why
the
is she not?
place. Yeah.
Why haven't you not just why is not one of them? Why have we not got another series of podcasts? Well, I wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't wasn't successful, or her fees were ridiculous for something that didn't get the kind of listeners that you need, and all the Netflix series probably cost an arm and a leg to produce, but again, they might have been better off paying every viewer a pound to and rather than making it, to say,
Yeah.
well, safe, and they would have made money probably.
Yeah.
So uh,
Netflix reducing their fees instead of giving
yeah,
Harry and Meghan millions of dollars. Yeah, we would
mm,
have liked to have seen that because they keep going
yeah.
up on their fees. And I keep thinking, is this even worth it? I don't think
Well,
so.
yeah, I know, and I wonder what he thinks he can command as a speaker. I don't know, but we keep hearing there's some eye-watering sums for him to
Well,
go
and how
and
many times can you tell us that your mom passed away when you were a
yeah,
teenage boy? Get a new song.
yeah, and also what's he actually done? Has he worked in an office 9 to 5? Yet he is then, isn't he? The better
Better
up is
up, the
about
better up
workplace.
work health. Yeah, workplace mental health. This
Mm,
guy quit his job because he couldn't
yeah,
hack it. I'm
yeah.
sorry, but I don't think he's an authority on workplace mental
Well,
health.
and again, and he doesn't. I don't know the finances of Better Up, but and what goes on within their organisation, but I don't feel he's the right ambassador for that because he
Mm,
doesn't work 9 to 5, and
right.
he, that's whereas William is doing the mental health, but he's actually suicide and is helping charities and giving those charities, or in particular St James's Place, or what the charity he was visiting today. I may have got the name wrong, but whatever, he's there to give it a shop window and to help promote it and help and produce centres around the country. And because he understands and is aware of the problems that, suicide in young men is the biggest killer for people under 35. So it is something that's very important. And we saw William in action doing it today to help promote and give attention to something that is clearly a problem. Whereas with Harry, it just feels needy.
Yeah, it just feels very performative. Agree with us, disagree with us? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. And I've got a date with Rupert next week, and we look forward to
Yeah.
seeing you both very soon.
Can you
Oh,
see my cat?
I
There
can
he
see your
is.
cat, sweet baby. Well,
Yeah,
thank
he
you for
was
sharing that with
really,
us.
he was really bored. Unfortunately, didn't move throughout. Sorry,
That's
but
hilarious.
that's Percy the pussy.
All
Anyway,
right.
goodbye.
All right, we'll see you again next time, guys. Bye.